So again, talking about the shoulder joint, glenohumeral joint. I was last mentioning one of the reinforcing structures is the tendon of the subscapularis muscle. There's the subscapularis muscle, and there's its tendon, so that helps reinforce the joint. Also the tendon of what's called the supraspinatus muscle, which would run through here, so there's the supraspinatus muscle. Another tendon here of the infraspinatus muscle. So we haven't talked about muscles yet, but when we do talk about muscles, we will revisit them, but those tendons reinforce the joint. Here's another tendon that comes through there and works its way down, and that's a tendon of one of the heads of the biceps tracheae muscle. So those are tendons. There's also some ligaments. There's the coracohumeral ligament that goes from the coracoid process to the humerus. That is a nice strong one. And then another supporting feature is this glenoid labrum, which helps deepen somewhat the glenoid cavity to make the socket a little deeper. And then in terms of just overall structure of the shoulder, there's the coracoacromial ligament from the coracoid process to the acromion, coracoacromial ligament. And then tethering the clavicle in place, the acromioclavicular ligament. Remember, ligaments bone to bone, from the acromion to the acromial end of the clavicle. And I believe that is it. There's plenty there. One thing I'm noticing here, the subcoracoid bursa, you don't need to know any of the bursae. Okay? We talked about bursae, but you don't need to know any by name. So ignore that little star there. Okay, let's go into the elbow joint. It is a hinge joint that happens to have a pivot joint in there. The humerus, distal end, and the radial ends of the ulna and the radius. The trochlea and trochlear notch, and the head of the radius. So the trochlea on the humerus, the trochlear notch on the ulna, that you can see there, head of the radius, and the capitulum of the humerus. See the capitulum? And there is the head of the radius. So of these three bones, and basically the two joints, the stronger joint is the humeral ulnar joint, humerus with the ulna, versus the humeral radial joint's not as strong. The humeral radial joint, though, is a pivot joint that allows the radius to rotate over the ulna when one is doing pronation. In this diagram here, the hand is in the supinated position, where the radius and ulna are parallel to each other. And let's look at a ball and socket joint, a hip joint. Just like the shoulder joint is the hip joint, also called the coxal joint. It's the head of the femur, fits into the nice deep acetabulum on the hip bone or coxal bone. Ball and socket joint, don't need to know any of the ligament names. Just like with the elbow joint, you don't need to know any of the ligament names. So I'm focusing more on the shoulder joint and then the upcoming knee joint. Okay, your knee joint. Also called the tibiofemoral joint because of the distal end of the femur and the proximal end of the tibia form most of the structural components, weight-bearing components, especially of this joint. Condyles of the femur and condyles of the tibia, and then the patella on the anterior part of the joint. It is a hinge joint. Anterior view still here. Condyles of the femur, lateral condyle, medial condyle. How do you know it's lateral condyle? The fibula is always lateral to the tibia. So then that would be the lateral condyle and the medial condyle of the tibia. And the patella, which has been removed here, cut here, is the patellar ligament. That is that. Okay, let's see here. Where are we? It's a hinge joint. Supporting ligaments, tendons, and the menisci. There's the quadriceps tendon, which is from the patella up to the quadriceps muscle. A tendon connects muscle to bone. The patellar ligament connects bone to bone. The tibia at the tibial tuberosity to the patella, which is a bone. Then there's ligaments. The fibular collateral ligament, also called the lateral collateral ligament. So the fibula is there. So there it is. It's cut here, but here's the... Oh no, it's not cut here. The fibular collateral ligament. Okay, goes from the femur down external to the capsule of the joint and goes down to the fibula. Hence the name fibular collateral ligament. And since the fibula is lateral, this ligament is also called the lateral collateral ligament. Then there's the tibial collateral ligament or the medial collateral ligament, and that's on this aspect of the joint. Tibial collateral ligament, or medial because the tibia is medial relative to the fibula. Again, external to the joint capsule. So these are external ligaments that reinforce the joint. The lateral meniscus. Remember, the fibula is lateral, so that meniscus, that pad in there, is the lateral one here. And then the medial meniscus is medial there, there. And then internal ligaments or intracapsular ligaments, the anterior cruciate ligament, ACL, we see right here or right there. And just behind it, you can see the posterior cruciate ligament, PCL, which you would see better if we look at the knee from the posterior aspect. Okay? So for these joints, more to know on the knee joint. Not too much on the hip, not too much on the elbow, and then more on the shoulder joint. All right? Okay, that's it for this chapter 8. There we go. Done. Whoa. Well, we talked about this already, okay? There we go.